The one principle you must know to manifest using the wall of assumption. So my friend, if you've come to this video, then this means that you have already gone deep into Neville Goddard's teaching. And you are already familiar with the secret, that the feeling is the secret, that you need to create the feeling of your wish fulfilled inside of your body, in your imagination, so that you can manifest and attract what you actually desire. But what doesn't get answered in many of his material, in most of his material and in many of his books, is how do you actually create this feeling? Like, how do you generate the feeling of your wish fulfilled? Because if this is the one principle, then how can you create the feeling? It's not that easy. This is what it turned out, and this is what you might have found out already. So in this video, my friend, my intention is to show you a method that I have discovered, the story manifestation method, and how it works, and how you can create the feelings of your wish fulfilled in your body, inside of your imagination, so that you can attract what you want in your life. So if this seems like something important to you, stay with me until the end, and I will show you exactly how you can practice this, how you can write your story, and how you can assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. So having that in mind, let's get directly into the video and start with the topic. First of all, I want to recall you, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember that, like, how is the feeling created initially? Like, if we look at your past, if we look at your life already, and if we look at every time that you have a feeling, like every time that you have an emotional reaction to something, every time that there is an emotion generated, what is happening? Because if you understand this principle, like if you understand what is already happening, how you already generate feelings, then it will be much easier to reverse engineer this same mechanism so that you can create feelings in your imagination. Feelings that you don't have to experience thanks to outer circumstances, but feelings that you can experience from the inside out. But what happens all the time, what happens in our life generally, is that every time you have a feeling, it is a response to an experience you're having in your mind. And this experience, it can be either imaginary, so it can be either, let's say, you have these mental conversations with yourself when you are going down the street and you're going to meet with a friend or you're going to work, and you're imagining in your mind what is it that could happen between your interactions, in the interactions between you and your colleagues, or in the interactions between you and your friend or the person you're meeting. And like with these mental conversations, this is how you generate the feeling. Like this is how you create the feeling tone of the experience even before it might have happened. So this is one way we create feelings in our imagination, and this happens all the time unconsciously. If you just observe your mind for a while in one day, you will see how it creates many different feelings. Let's say it may create frustration, it may create guilt, it may create gratitude, it may create sadness, it may create many different feelings, and all of them are a response to an imaginary experience, either an imaginary experience that you're having in your mind, because you assume what might happen when you go and meet with the people you meet with your life in your everyday encounters, or it might be a real experience. And when it's real, it's basically the subjective meaning that we give to the experience that creates the feeling. So let's say that you're having a fight with your spouse or like with your loved one, and generally you experience a lot of love in that relationship. But in one day you had a fight, and in this fight, it's like you found out that some of your expectations didn't get met. You found out that your partner was disrespecting to you, and your response to this information, to what your partner, what your loved one was telling you, your response to this created a feeling. So your subjective meaning to a circumstance creates a feeling. So anytime you give a meaning to something that is happening inside the outer world, you generate a feeling. And also every time you experience an inner conversation, an inner dialogue, like an inner scenery that is played out in your imagination and is taken from the everyday experiences that you're already having with the people in your life, then you can also create a feeling, but it's 100% imaginary. And this is how we generally generate feelings unconsciously through our everyday experiences. And now I just want you to remember a moment like that. Can you recall a moment in which like you have experienced a fight with a loved one, or like you have been going to work or like to meet with a friend, and in your mind you are assuming the interactions you have with that person? And can you recall how this has created a feeling in your body? Because if the answer is yes, then this means that we now understand what is the process. We understand what is already happening. And if you understand what is already happening, then we can replicate that process. And this is the one principle of like how we can create feelings to manifest what we desire. So this is basically the teaching here. But if you get this principle now, I just want to read you one quote from Neville, and then we'll contemplate this quote, and then we'll go directly into the method so I can show you how you can apply it and attract to yourself the desires you want. So, and I'll give you an example of how I've done this in my life on many different occasions already. So here is the quote. Neville says that if you act on the assumption that you already possess that which you sought, like you should act on the assumption that you already possess that which you sought. What does that mean? Because acting out on an assumption, this may mean that you are taking an action, but this is not the case. This is how people understand this incorrectly. Because acting out on an assumption means that you can create an imaginary experience in your mind where there are like you're meeting with somebody, and like you have a backstory of your character that is meeting with another person, and in the interaction with that other person you have an assumption of what is true about yourself. And so acting out on your assumption, acting on the assumption that you already possess that which you sought, means that in your imagination you should create a story in which you act out with a friend, you interact with a friend or with somebody in your life, you act out what you assume of yourself already. So it's like the action that you take in your imagination must assume that you already possess that which you sought. So this is, for example, when you create a story in your mind of how you're congratulated by your friend because of your hard work on something that you have been excited to work on and that you have finally achieved, and then you get this congratulation from your friend, and you can experience the feelings of pridefulness, of fulfillment, of achievement inside this little imagination, because it's a proof of what you have already achieved. And if you create this feeling again of like, let's say, achievement, of satisfaction, of fulfillment, then this feeling would naturally inspire you to take the actions needed in the outer world so that you can attract what you need to attract. Or it's like, sometimes it's not even about taking actions. Sometimes it's about just assuming this feeling for long enough time so that other people can join you in your imagination, in your assumption, and they can deliver to you what you wanted, what you assumed to yourself in imagination. So sometimes it's about when you hold a feeling of your assumption for long enough time, sometimes you find yourself inspired to act upon something in the outer world so that you can get closer to your desire. Like, this is how it looks, how it looks practically, logistically in the outer world. And at other times you will see that other people are getting close to you to give you what you assume of yourself already. So this is how it happens practically. But for that to happen, again, you need to create the feeling. And for you to create the feeling, you need to create a story. And now let's get into the story manifestation method, because this is what it means. Like, this is what this Neville Goddard quote means. And like, this is from his book, The Power of Awareness. So act on the assumption that you already possess that which you sought. That which you sought, it's in a past tense. So it's like, in your imagination, you should create a story. That's why you have a backstory. And we'll go into the process, into the method in a second. But it's like, in your backstory, you should already assume yourself that you have done the sufficient work that you can, that you need to do, and all of this is happening in your imagination. That you have already done the sufficient work you need to do, and then you interact with some other person, with a friend, let's say, and then this friend congratulates you on what you have done, and you feel the feeling of excitement, of not excitement, but of again, of fulfillment, of achievement. And so it's like, act on the assumption that you already possess that which you sought. Can you see the meaning now? Already possess that which you sought. When your friend is congratulating you for all the actions that you have taken and all the achievements that you have made, this means that you already possess, like, this action. Your friend congratulating you and you feeling that, like, this is the action, let's say. Your friend congratulating you and you feeling that feeling of achievement, of satisfaction. This means that it's like your assumption is already complete. You already possess that which you sought. That's why in a past tense. And your friend, it's like, let's say he's really astonished that you have achieved what you were dreaming of. And like he congratulates you with a lot of passion, a lot of excitement. And you're like really happy that your friend is respecting you so much in your dreams, and like he's supporting you so much in your dreams. And you can create a story of that in your mind, in your imagination. And if this person is a closer one, let's say, if you put a close person in your imagination in the story that you are creating, since this person is already close to you and you care about his opinion, then you can intensify the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Because if you're congratulated for something that you have achieved by a friend that you value highly, well, obviously you feel more empowered by this congratulation, right? And you might have already experienced that in your life. You probably have. So it's all about replicating the same process, replicating the same experience in a story that you create in your imagination. And this is when we get into the method. So how do you create a story? Okay, if the feeling is the secret, and now we understand that to create a feeling, we need to create a story, because the story is almost like the vehicle that will make the inner imaginary experience real enough so that we can experience the feeling of the wish fulfilled inside of our imagination. And then we can hold that feeling, because the longer we hold it, the faster we attract what we want, what we desire. And like, since the achievement of our desire is already contained within the feeling, the more we embody that feeling through our everyday life, the faster we attract what we desire again. So, but for that we need to have a story. And you can also create a couple of stories if you want to like apply this method more intensely, but I promise you, my friend, if you try it, you'll see how it works. So what does it include? The story manifestation method, it includes you writing a story that assumes the feeling of your wish fulfilled and you playing it out in imagination, let's say every time just before you go to sleep. And so how does that work? What are the ingredients of a story? You just have like the most basic stories have just 4 ingredients. So you have a backstory. The backstory, this is like, let's say, let us imagine that you're watching a Marvel movie right now, and you know that the main character of a Marvel movie always has a backstory. It has a backstory of his childhood, it has a backstory of his desires, of his biggest dreams, it has a backstory of what he's afraid of. So this is the backstory. And in your story, in the story that you'll be creating in your mind, you need to have a backstory of yourself. So inside of your imagination, you need to create it. So how does that look? Well, it looks like something like, at this stage of my life, I was in a situation in which I highly desired to meet this specific person that I wanted to fall in love with. Because I was watching so many people around me having, let's say, their dream romantic relationships, and I felt alone, and I was really afraid of feeling alone. I wasn't feeling good about feeling alone. And that's why my biggest desire was to meet the love of my life. And this is what inspired me. And now this is the backstory. And so this is what inspired me, and here you go into an intro, the intro of the story. The intro of the story is when you take some form of action, or when somebody else in the outside world, some friend, takes an action towards you. So now that you have a character who has a backstory, and this backstory makes the character real. So in your imagination now it has more vividness. It's not just something like illusory or a fantasy. It becomes real, because the backstory makes this character solid. It gives him more importance in a way, and this importance makes the feelings that this character experience real, and that's how you can create a feeling of your wish fulfilled again. So from the backstory you go into the intro part of the story, and this is again when somebody takes some form of action. It can be your character, your main character, or it can also be another character in the environment that you're surrounded with. So let's say in the backstory that I just gave you an example, I desired to be in a romantic relationship and to experience love in my life, and I saw all my friends and all the people around me being in relationships. So at one time I was just going to a coffee with a friend. Again, this is the intro. I was going to a coffee with a friend, and at the meeting, in the coffee, this friend of mine told me that, well, before he was also like a year before what he's experiencing now, he was also in a situation like me. He desired a lot of love. All the friends around him were like experiencing romantic relationship, and then he told me, like he told me his experience of what he has gone through, and he told me that he realized this one thing, and he realized that he just needs to be as loving as possible and express his feelings of love to all the people around him, because if he were to do that, then some of the people, like some of the, let's say, women or men around him will relate to him, and this will get him closer to being in a relationship. And once he realized that, and he shared to me that story on the coffee we were together, again, this is the intro. Let's say in this intro, your friend has taken an action towards you to share with you that story, and now you're feeling this excitement starting to come up in your body. You're like, whoa, he has been on my place, and he realized this. He realized that he can just express his love to others so that he can relate to them, and that's how he ran away from his loneliness. And now I'm feeling excited, like in this imaginary story I'm creating, I'm feeling this empowerment from the inside, because I see that somebody else has already transformed to the person that I want to be, and they were giving me their story and what they have learned, and so now these feelings of excitement come up, and now this comes to the culmination point. And the culmination point, let's say, of the story, I'm just giving an example here. You can write your own story. I'm giving a little detailed example just so that you understand what are these 4 ingredients of a story. But if you understand them, and if you write the story with those 4 ingredients, you'll create a feeling. And if you create a feeling, again, it's like a matter of time until you start attracting your desire to yourself. So getting back to the example. So this friend of yours, you're on a coffee, he's sharing with you this story, and he also shared with you how he realized that to not be lonely, he just has to express the love he already feels to the people around him, and like try to not care when he will be when he will be rejected, or like not respected by them, because it's all about him trying to be as authentic as possible. And then, okay, this is again the example of the intro, and then the culmination point. And then I was standing there at the coffee, and, like just in front of him, listening to the story, feeling really interested, feeling really curious of that. And I was thinking to myself, whoa, what if it was my role to tell this girl that I was just liking for a while in my life, that I like her? What if it was me who had to do that? And because I was hiding my feelings towards her for a really long time already, and now that my friend shared his story, and now this is the combination, this is where the feelings generated. Now, with the curiosity of like how he has achieved the transformation I want, I see it's possible, and now I get this epiphany. Like, this is the outro of the story. I get this epiphany that I can tell to this girl that I'm liking her, and I'm liking this and this and this and that about her, like specific, let's say, I like her hair, I like her I don't know, behavior in some way, shape or form. And if I were to tell her that, and if I were to tell that to everybody around me who I liked, well, this means that the love I am seeking in my life will have to find me. And now I'm starting to feel this feeling of love inside this story that I'm writing. And again, all of this happening in your imagination. So the more detailed your story is, the more intense the feeling will be. So again, like, okay, I had the backstory. I went to a coffee with a friend where he shared me that story, and I was thinking to myself, and then I told him, well, what if I do that? And I was like, I was looking almost for an advice from him, and I was like asking him, what if I do that? And then his response was, you definitely should. This is basically exactly what I did a year ago to get into the position in which I am right now. And so when I heard the response of my friend, I was like so filled with love and like with confidence already, because I already see how this is possible. And then if you want, you can go further with the story. Let's say you can wake up the next day and then call the people you were liking in your environment and like go out on a walk with them, and on the walk just tell them everything that you like about them. And you can, if you want to continue, if you want to expand that story, you can, like from the intro you have a culmination, you can from here you can, let's say, create a strategy, and the strategy may be what I'm suggesting here. But these are not necessary parts of a story. This is if you want to go really deep. But if you don't want to go really deep, and if you just want to play with this method, it's all enough if you end it there. Like again, in the example I'm giving you, it's like, okay, my friend accepted, like he appreciated. He appreciated what I was telling him in response to the story he told me, and he was like, you should definitely do that. So he gave me his advice, and I was feeling really excited, really empowered. And then I got home and I was like, I just started imagining how I can, how can I tell that I like all the people in my life, that I like something about them, and yeah, and you can end that story there. This because you have an epiphany, and the epiphany is basically, again, anytime you have an epiphany, it creates a feeling. So if you can create a story in which you interact with close people around you or in your imagination, they're telling you something which, in response to what they're telling you, you have a feeling, and this feeling is because you have an epiphany of something that they told you, and now what they have told you has clicked within you, and now you have this epiphany of like this realization, and this realization, it comes up with a feeling, and this is how you can assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. This is how you can imagine yourself being loving if you're looking for love. This is how you can imagine yourself being confident if you're looking for, I don't know, if you want to impact people in your life, if you want to be some form of a leader in your life. This is how you can create the feeling of freedom if you feel restricted in some area. Again, it's all just by creating a story, my friend. And you can do this in many different aspects of your life. It's just, are you willing to try it? Are you willing to give this a try? Are you willing to stand, like to sit down and write a story? Write a story that has a backstory about your main character. It has an intro point, the action. Somebody takes an action, either you or somebody else takes an action, and this action leads to a culmination, which is the feeling. Like, because there needs to be some form of movement so that you can have the feeling. The action doesn't have to necessarily include other people. Let's say if you want to live in a new place which has a great view of the sea in front of you, you can imagine yourself how you get back from work one day. Let's say you create some backstory of you, and the backstory is that you wanted this place really, you wanted it a lot for a lot of time, but it was hard to find. And then at some point, like, your realtor called you and told you, well, there is this one place that you should definitely check out. And like, you went on to see that place, and like you imagine yourself walking on the floor and going to the window and seeing this really beautiful view of the sea, and you are like, you instantly looked at the realtor and told him, I'm taking that place. So can you see, like, because you get the feeling from an action that you take, and like then you can intensify that action if you also include another person in it. Because if there is another person, again, in your imagination, the whole situation that you are creating becomes more real. It becomes solid. It's not fantasy anymore. It becomes real. the longer, like the more detailed story you can create, the more you immerse yourself in that story, the more intense the feeling out of that story will be. And this is the secret. The feeling is the secret. So this, my friend, is how you can create feelings. And this is basically the one principle you must know to manifest. That through stories, you can create feelings. And if you create a detailed enough story so that it creates this feeling inside of you, then you're on your way to manifest your desires, to attract them to yourself. And just to give you some examples of how I use that, I've used it to attract freelance clients in my freelance business, like specific clients with specific character traits and specific type of work that I wanted to do. I use this same method, creating a vision and a story from that vision for attracting romantic relationships in my life. Something similar to what I gave an example of. I use this same method to attract clients in my coaching and consulting business. Like, I created an avatar of my ideal client, and from there I created the story of how he, like the backstory of him and what actions he took so that he met me. And like when he met me, he was like thinking to himself, I definitely need to work with this guy. And all of this was a story that I created, and like weeks later, the same guy that I created in the story found me, because the feeling was there, and the feeling is the secret. And like, if you can create feelings intentionally, consciously, well, you can take control over your imagination and over what you experience in your life. So my friend, give this a try. It's such a powerful method. If you give it a try, it's like, I promise you, you'll get the results. But it might, just one warning, it might take a couple of times for you to play out this story in your mind, and you can intensify this feeling to a strong enough intensity before it manifests. Because you need to hold this feeling in your everyday life. And that's why I would suggest also that you go to sleep with this story in your mind, playing out this story. Let's say taking 10 to 15 minutes just before you go to sleep, after closing your eyes and laying down, before you go to the dream world, to play out this story in your imagination and intensify the feelings. And doing this for at least 1 week will get you in a position in which it starts attracting to yourself your desire, because the feeling is there. And the secret is that the feeling is the secret. This is the secret. So if you have the feeling, your desire is already there. Thank you, my friend, again. Thank you for watching. Hope that you found this useful. If this is the case, like the video, comment down below. Let me know if you like these types of videos. And I would love to create more of them, because at this stage of my life, I'm going really deep into Neville Goddard's teaching, and I've read all of his books and going into deep research. So I do plan to share all my epiphanies and all the practical techniques that I learn and apply to my life and apply to other people I'm working with, like their lives, and see that they work, and share them in this YouTube channel. So if this sounds like something that you would want to be part of, like this video, comment down below, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. For now, bye bye, wish you a great day, and I love you. See ya, my friend.